Abba Yahuwah, I just want to praise you and I just want to thank you. I thank you for the Shabbat. I thank you for your shalom. I thank you that you alone are the one that is worthy to be praised. I thank you, my Father, that you are meeting us in this time as we are looking at these tribes and these months and what they represent. And Abba, my Father, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you for the mighty work that you are doing in our lives in this time, as you are coming to be able to reveal to us your purposes and your plans, Father. As you are opening up your word to us, for us to be able to come to the place of having the deeper understanding of your prophetic utterances for what we are doing with every tribe, with every month, so that we may be battle ready, so that we may understand what was it that these tribes did that was significant. You have put so many things in your word for us to be able to glean from, for us to be able to learn from, so that we may understand your heartbeat. And Father, wow, I just want to thank you, because the more I look into these tribes and the more I understand these months, the more I'm understanding why you are wanting us to be able to pray strategically. As even in this time where we are now in the month of Asher, you have been able to lead us to pray very specifically, so that we may be able to understand what it is that you are wanting in this month, in not just praying aimlessly. The time has come that we need to be able to come to a place of hitting the mark. Our prayers need to hit the mark. Our prayers need to be very strategic in hitting the mark. And so, Abba, my Father, I just want to praise you, and I just want to thank you that you alone are the one that is going to be able to come and speak to us, your oracles, to understand this tribe of Naphtali, to understand this month of Adar, so that we can glean from it, so that we are battle ready, so that we are battle equipped, in order to be able to know how to pray for this next month. We are now just coming into the time of where we are just onto halfway or just over halfway of this month that we are in, of the month of Shvat, and preparing ourselves with, as we are winding down, as now the moon is in its waning phase, where we are winding down to the end of this month, where we prepare ourselves for the last month of the year. As we are to prepare ourselves, and as we will study this tribe, we are to understand what is the significance of what we need to understand for this time of this last month of the year, the only month that you will be able to give us a second month. When the time comes, it's the only month, the only tribe, and the only month that there will be an extra month, in order for us to be able to have the alignment of timing in what it needs to be. And so, Abba, my Father, I pray that you would speak to my mind, speak through my lips, the very oracles, my Father, that would come from your heart. And I praise and I thank you, Father, that you alone will be able to come and reveal to us the deeper revelation of what you are wanting to show us in this month of Adar. And so, Abba, my Father, I praise and I thank you that I surrender myself to you right now and allow you to come and speak your word in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah. And so we are looking at this. Last week we looked at, as we started, and we were looking at this month of Adar and the tribe of Naphtali. and we have been focusing on the tribe of Naphtali as we were working through the tribe of Naphtali, and we had a look at the blessings, the two blessings, the blessing that is in Deuteronomy chapter 33, and we had a look at the blessing in Genesis chapter 49. And so we were looking at these two blessings, and we are going to now look a little bit more at the understanding of the tribe of Naphtali, and then we are going to wind down by being able to look at the month of Adar and really focusing on what the month of Adar is about. So we are going to see in Judges, let's go to Judges, let's go and read Judges chapter 1. So let's go to the book of Judges, chapter 1, and we are going to look at verse 33. And in Judges chapter 1, verse 33, it says, "Neither did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Beit Anath, but they dwelt among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of Shemesh, the inhabitants of the land, and the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh and of Beit Anath became compulsory labor for them." So here we see how sad it is that once again here is another tribe. So basically we have seen all three of these tribes of the north did not take the land that they were supposed to. So if we have a look and we see a lot of this land that we are talking about would must probably land up being the land of Lebanon, and the land of Lebanon, the country Lebanon, would not have existed if they had been faithful to be able to take the land of the north. Then you would most probably find that Syria and Lebanon would not have been there if they had gone and taken the land. And so whatever it is that Israel does not conquer, when they did not conquer the land, there's a difference between when the Father said, "Do not touch the Ammonites and the Moabites," and he gave them explicit instruction not to touch their land, and that is the land of Jordan. And so the land of Jordan the Father gave to Esau. And so the land of Jordan is not to be inhabited by the children of Israel. But Lebanon was supposed to have been a land that they were supposed to have inhabited. And so right now we see where Israel resides in the problem that they found themselves in with the Gaza, because they owned the Gaza, and then when they gave away the land for peace, what has it cost them? It cost them how many hostages and how many people dead? Because we cannot barter the Father's land for peace. Because when the Father said that this is what you got to do, drive out the enemy out of your land. So what does that talk to us today? You cannot barter with the enemy. You cannot half obey. You cannot turn around and say, well, I will obey a little bit, but I will not obey there. It's not going to happen. Because whatever you do not totally overcome will then overcome you. So whatever you do not drive out of your life, whatever you do not drive out of your mind, your will, your emotions, out of your land, whatever is in your land, whatever is the altars that is still raised up in your land, whatever you do not drive out of your land is going to become a snare to you, and it will become a thing that is going to be able to get you to compromise in your walk with the Father. And that is the warning for the tribe of Naphtali. The warning for the tribe of Naphtali is that Naphtali will have a tendency to want to compromise, and if they compromise, this will become a problem. So let us have a look and see. Beit Shemesh What does the word Beit Shemesh mean? Beit Shemesh means house of the sun, which means sun temple, which means sun god worship, which means the idol Ra. So we are to get rid of the idols in our life, and that is why, what is the Father wanting to do with us now? From now until we are going to come into our Passover, when we are going to come into the time of the Passover, we are really going to need to prepare ourselves to cross over the river Jordan, not to come through the Red Sea, but to cross over the river Jordan in order to be able to come into the promised land, because we need to be able to now start walking in the fullness and the promises that the Father has given us, because we are now in this time of the fullness of time. And because we are now in this time of the fullness of time, we need to be able to prepare ourselves. But that means getting rid of sun god worship, getting rid of customs and traditions, of things that are there that is not the Father's way. So it's the religious systems or the religious things that are there. Because look and see, Beit Anath is the house of affliction. So we have to get rid of these things of our lives so that we don't have affliction. Because whatever we don't clean up now, it's going to afflict us in the end. Because you see, they are dwelling with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were zealous, and they are traffickers, and they are merchants. And what happened was that the Naphtalis wanted to be able to trade with the Canaanites. You cannot trade with the enemy. You cannot trade in the enemy's ground. And you know what? If you want to be able to trade with the enemy, you can trade with him, but you cannot be in the camp with him. You cannot be in bed with him. You cannot embrace. You cannot embrace the enemy's tactics. You cannot embrace the enemy's ways, because that will bring us the affliction in our lives. And so when the Father showed me this Beit Shemesh, this house of the sun temple, the sun god worship, which is Ra, every bit of religious spiritual things in our lives. Now, I know that a lot of people will look at this and turn around and say, well, you know what, this applies to the people that are in sun god worship in the Sunday church. Fair enough. I'm not going to deny that. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, sun god worship in a lot of the Christianity is leading us into sun god worship, and is leading us away from the Father and His presence. But at the same time, we need to be able to be very aware of what is going on in Judaism, where Judaism is also a religion that is wanting to be able to seep us into customs and traditions of man, that is also going to get us to compromise the truth of this word, that is going to lead us astray. And that is the warning for the tribe of Naphtali. The warning for the tribe of Naphtali is that it is easily compromised to want to trade with those living with them. And the Father has not asked us to trade with them. The Father has asked us to be able to not be in bed with them and not follow their ways. We are to be set apart. The only one that we follow is Yeshua the Messiah. He's the one that leads us to all truth. And unfortunately, Judaism right now is not really leading us to the truth of Yeshua. It's leading us to customs and traditions of man, especially when we start going deep into understanding the Zohar and the Mishnah. And I'm listening to many things that are out there that is starting to become very dangerous, because we are not to be able to compromise with the word of the Father. We are to stick with the word, because this Torah portion of this week's Torah portion of Numbers of Deuteronomy chapter 4, Deuteronomy chapter 3 and chapter 4, it's very clearly telling us that we are not to be able to add to the word or take away from the word. So in this Vayet Hanan, which is the Torah portion for this week, in Deuteronomy 4 verses 2, it says we are not to add to the word, we are not to take away from the word. So Father doesn't take very lightly to the fact that we are to add to the word, and we are not to take away from the word. So what we find is in sun God worship, now hear me, this is the revelation that the Father is giving today. In sun God worship, they take away from the word. They don't want to do what the word says. They take away from the word. And then in Judaism, they add to the word what is not there. So we have to be very careful that we are not taking away and adding to the word our own things and taking away what pleases us. To be able to build another religion. This word, everything about what we're walking in at the moment, when we came back to the ways of Torah, was never to be able to build another religion. It was to be able to follow our Messiah into the revelation of all the truth of His word. He wants us to follow Him in the truth of the word. This is what He wants. And Him being the word that has been made manifest, and He's given us the Ruach of Yahuwah to lead us back to the truth of this word. Because this word is being opened up to us in the revelation of the truth. So, we need to be able to walk in the Spirit and not compromise. So, even though we live among the inhabitants of the land, we are not to compromise the instructions and the truth of the Father's word. So even though we may be living amongst the inhabitants of the earth right now, we are from another order. And this is what we've got to realize. So even though we are walking amongst the inhabitants of the world, of the land, we are not to compromise. And this is what Naphtali did. They compromised. We must get rid of all the idols. We must get rid of all that makes us compromise and dwell with the worship of the idolatrous things or idolatrous religions, which goes against Abba Yahuwah's word. So even that which looks good and sounds good, if it's coming from the tree of the knowledge, then we are not to eat from that tree, even though it looks good and sounds good. That's what we've got to realize. It's still eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So even though it looks good and sounds good, we are not to be able to compromise the word of the Father by being able to worship with their ways and doing their things their way, because we've got to get back to the truth of the word. And that is the danger with Naphtali. And that is what the Father was opening up to me in terms of Naphtali, is that this is the danger for this month. We are preparing ourselves. Remember, this would be the month, this month of Adar is the month of exactly when the Israelites were going through the plagues before they entered into going into Passover. This is the month of the plagues. It's the month of the judgment of the Father upon the Egyptians. But if any Israelite went into the Egyptian camp, they would be judged with the Egyptians. Can you just imagine if that was say now, for example, there was an Israelite and they were the firstborn, and yet they were visiting, or they were maybe in a relationship with one of the Egyptians in Egypt. Well, that was there, not in Goshen where they were staying. And that night, they happened to be out there, and they were the firstborn. They would not be protected. They would die with the firstborn child of the Egyptians, because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. because they were compromising. So it is a serious time that we are in, because for us to be protected in Goshen, we need to be protected under the Father's protection by being in the Father's truth. Remember, in Noah's ark, only Noah and his family, Noah and his sons and his daughter-in-laws and his wife entered into the ark. All his brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, uncles and aunts did not enter the promised land. They did not enter into the ark. They did not enter into the promise of the new world that the Father was going to start up. Why? They lived in the same house. They lived in the same house. And remember, Noah had brothers and sisters. Let us have a look at this, because I don't like to speak something unless I show it to you in the Word. So in Genesis chapter 5, it says, verse 31, so all the days of Lamech was 700. Yeah. Genesis chapter 5, verse 30. And after he brought forth Noah, Lamech lived 595 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So he brought forth other sons and daughters. So Noah had younger brothers and sisters. So where were those brothers and sisters in the ark? Where were his sons and daughters in the ark? Where were their sons and daughters? Where were the brothers? Where was his nephews and his nieces? Those brothers and sisters of Noah that had children. Where were they in the ark? None of them made the ark. Yet they all lived in the same house with Noah. They all heard the same message as Noah. But you see, did they compromise on their stand? Did they compromise on the word of Yahuwah? They compromised, and they did not follow through in that which Noah was believing. They did not follow through on that. So this is the warning that is coming for this tribe and for this month, where in this month was when the judgment of the plagues was taking place. So we are in the time, this month and next month is the time of the judgments that is coming upon the earth. As we are getting ready to cross over at Passover. So if we go look at Judges chapter 4 now, let's read from Judges chapter 4, and we're going to read from verses 4. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lipidoth, was ruling Israel at that time, and she was dwelling under the palm tree of Deborah, between Ramah and Beth El, in the mountains of Ephraim. And the children of Israel came up to her for right ruling. And she sent and called for Barak, son of Binoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali. So do you see, Barak was one that was from the tribe of Naphtali, and said to him, has not Yahuwah, Eloah of Israel, commanded, go, and you shall draw towards Mount Tabor, and shall take with you 10,000 men of the sons of Naphtali and the sons of Zebulun. So isn't it interesting that we have a look and we see? Remember, I turned around and I said, what would be the connection between the sons, between Naphtali and between where we were looking at the west? What is the connection between the west, and what is the connection between the south? When it said, and it's going to, they will connect. Remember, they are a tribe from the north, but it talked about the west and the south. Now it's interesting because I said that in the gates, in the time of the New Jerusalem, in the temple, according to Ezekiel chapter 48, the gates for the tribe of Naphtali will be on the west. So Naphtali will be on the west gate with Gad and Asher. But the gate of the south is Zebulun. So there's the connection Then between Naphtali and the gate of the south, that would be Zebulun, because Zebulun is normally in the east with Judah. So it's normally in the east with Judah, but now it's going to be in the south. That, you see how it connects now. So it's going to be connected to the west, where it's going to be the west gate, and now it's going to be connected to the south, where Zebulun here, it goes to battle with Zebulun. So there's a connection between Naphtali and Zebulun, and we see that here in this, where he says that they are to be able to go. And he says, and 10,000 men of Naphtali and of the sons of Zebulun. So Naphtali and Zebulun come together in order to be able to go to battle. And I shall draw unto you Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his company at the Wadi Kishon, and shall give him into your hands. And Barak said to her, if you go with me, then I shall go. But if you do not go with me, I do not go. So do you see, one of the things about Naphtali, the tribe of Naphtali, they don't have this thing of having to do things alone. They are quite happy to be able to. Barak was a man. Imagine, Barak was a man, and yet he was willing to go to battle with a woman. So they are willing to raise up those that are of Naphtali as men. They have no problem in being able to stand together with a woman to go to battle. And it says, and Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up, 10,000 men under his command, and Deborah went with him. And Adar the Canaanite of the children of Hobab, and the father-in-law of Moshe, had separated himself from the Canaanites, and pitched his tent near the terebinth tree at Sananyim, which is beside Kadesh. And they reported to Sisera, Barak, son of Abinadab, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera called all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the people who were with him from Horasheth Hagoyim to the Wadi Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, rise up, for this is the day in which Yahuwah has given Sisera into your hand. Has not Yahuwah gone out before you? And Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men after him, and Yahuwah destroyed Sisera and all his chariots and all his army with the edge of the sword before Barak, and Sisera leaped from his chariot and fled away on foot. So praise the Father. Do you see, here is the core heart of one who is from the tribe of Naphtali. They want to see freedom. They want to go and set people free. So they compromised in not doing battle in Judges chapter 1 because their mind was on the trade. But yet, in the heart of hearts, Barak is a prime example of what it means for Naphtali. Now, the word Barak means lightning sword. So you see that this lightning sword was let loose, like the tribe of Naphtali is to be let loose. It's not to be bound, but it's like a deer that is to be let loose and go forth and be free. And he heard the word and he obeyed. So Naphtali will hear the word of the Father and they will obey. And so we see in Judges chapter 5 from verses 1 to 31, which we're not going to read. But yeah, we turn around and we see that again in Judges chapter 5 from verses 18, it says, Zebulun is a people who risk their lives to the point of death, Naphtali also on the heights of the field. So yeah, we see that both Zebulun and Naphtali risk their lives to the point of death in order to come and set their people free. And this is the heart of one that is of the tribe of Naphtali. They will wrestle. And that is what we've read about Naphtali, that they wrestle, that they will wrestle and they will prevail, and they will wrestle in order to be able to overcome. So they will wrestle in prayer, they will wrestle in a battle until they overcome and they prevail. And they will do it even to the extent where they will fast, they will pray, they will bring someone through. That's why they're powerful intercessors, because they wrestle in the Spirit in intercession. Now when we have a look at the gates of Naphtali, when we look at the gates of Naphtali, which is in the west, which you're going to get the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Asher with them, the stronghold of the tribe of Naphtali is the stronghold of jealousy. So we've got to guard in this month, guard for the jealousy that might rise up in our hearts. Remember what I said to you, when we get to the gates, it's not necessarily that is what is going to be necessarily what that tribe is all about. It's more in the sense of where each gate that we go through in our lives, we go through different sections, the same as we fight different battles, and we might have one part of a tribe more than another part of another tribe. As we work through these months that we see, we are wrestling in the time of that tribe in that month, even though we might necessarily not come from that tribe. And so the stronghold of Naphtali is jealousy, and the redemptive key is love. So you will find that if a Naphtali has had to wrestle with jealousy, that they will have overcome this in their lives, this jealousy. And how do they overcome it? Because they will be a tribe that walks in tremendous love. They will give love. They will lay their lives down because of love. No greater love is there than for one to lay down their life for a brother. So that is what Naphtali will do. Naphtali will lay down their lives for a brother because of love. Because of, first and foremost, the love that they have for the Father. Their whole being is to put the Father first, to love the Father with all their heart. And so as they're loving the Father, they love their neighbor, they love their people enough to want to see them free. And therefore they will lay down their lives for the love that they have to see people be set free. Because of the Father's love that is in them. Because of the fact that the Father himself has set them free. So we're now going to look at the month of Adar. So when we have a look at this month of Adar, what does the month of Adar represent? What does the month of Adar mean? We've already looked at when we saw that the month of Adar is a time of, it's also a time of celebration, so that we may be able to see the celebrating of, I just want to be able to, you see, Adar is also known as the month of joy. The joy that leads to strength. Adar means strength. The joy of Yahuwah is my strength. So interesting that in this month of Adar, the Father will be revealing himself to us, as he's already started to reveal himself to us as Al Gibor, mighty and strength. And so it's known as the month of success and victory, empowerment and strength, because it is connected with the word Adir, which means strength and power. So this will be a month that we will see the Father's strength and power, but why and how? Because Yahuwah wants this time to be a celebration for us. We're going to have this joy of a celebration because we will wrestle and overcome. Because the curse is overturned and things become sweet. Because Naphtali also means the sweetness is to me. Sweetness is to me. So Adar is a month to rejoice It is a month to celebrate, and it is to enjoy the sweetness of Yahuwah, to enjoy the strength of Yahuwah, the joy of Yahuwah. That is my strength, and it's the sweetness of Yahuwah. Adar is the month that we see that Naphtali also means sweetness is to me. And it is a time to celebrate and enjoy the sweetness of Yahuwah. So we're going to see this is a time, a month, Adar is also the month of Purim. So it's the month of the book of Esther. And so you cannot go into Adar without having to look at Esther. But we do not celebrate Purim as the Jews celebrate Purim. And that is why I'm putting the warning here, because this is the warning. We are not to be able to compromise on the Father's word by being able to do things that is customs and traditions of man, that is absolutely demonic of what goes on in the land of Israel when it comes to the Feast of Purim. And once again, I'm going to say, the Feast of Purim is not a feast of Yahuwah that is given by Yahuwah, but it was something that it's in the word that we can celebrate, but it is not a commanded a feast to celebrate, and absolutely not to be celebrated as it is celebrated in Israel, with putting on all these costumes of Spider-Man and Batman and witches and hexes and pixies and whatever else, and then we get drunk to the point of falling over. That is not the way to be celebrating, masquerading ourselves and masquerading ourselves because of this whole little play of Haman and Esther. We should be taking the victory and understanding the victory that comes out of Purim, as opposed to us being able to go and want to masquerade ourselves and hide our identity and why we do all this masquerading. It's so interesting because even with, I really understand where we Portuguese people come from, that a lot of us, we definitely come from the Jews, because when I was, a young girl growing up, we had a Portuguese club where we would, gather together, and this is where we would come together as Portuguese people in a nation that was not our nation, but we would stay together as our people, and we would celebrate our festivals. And the one thing that we celebrated was this masquerading. We would call it the carnival. It was the carnaval, and it was like a carnival, and it would always be in this time of February, March, and we would there would be a time, they would know which day it was, we would not know which day it was, but you see, this is the thing, the Jews know the day that it is, and they would know when the carnival would be. And then we would all dress up in costumes and hide our identity, and then it would be like a big competition of who would be the best dressed person, that would be the most masqueraded, the one that really nobody could recognize who they were. And then that would be the person that would win that feast that day. And only years later now, only once I started coming onto my path, then I understood what this was all about, because it was always being celebrated at this time of the year, February, March. It would be when they would celebrate it, and so it would be like late February or early in March or sometime in March that they would start to celebrate this carnival. And I never even understood what it was all about. And only when I started realizing what the Jews do with Purim, then I understood what we were doing, where this came from, and why we would masquerade ourselves, and why we would have this carnival that we would celebrate without even knowing what we were celebrating. So, do you see, customs and traditions can be passed down without us even being aware of what it was about. And so, if we go look in Esther, let us go look at Esther. So let's go to the book of Esther. And we go to Esther chapter 5. And this, for me, is the most significant scripture in terms of really coming in light of prayer for the month of, for this month of Adar, for us to be able to know how to pray and come before the Father as Naphtali in this month and how to pray. And it came to be on the third day that Esther put on royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the sovereign's palace, in front of the sovereign's house, while the sovereign sat on his royal throne in the royal house opposite the entrance of the house. And it came to be, when the sovereign saw Sovereigness Esther standing in the court, that she found favor in his eyes. So you see, this is a month of favor. This is a month of when we need to find favor in the Father's eyes. And found favor in his eyes, and the sovereign held out to Esther the golden scepter which was in his hand, and Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. So do you see, the Father is going to stretch out his scepter to those like Naphtali that are going to humble themselves before him, wrestle in prayer to be able to overcome, and he will be able to hear the cry of our hearts to set us free. So Esther stood before the Father as one that humbled herself to be able to pray to the Father in order to be able to have her people be set free. So do you see how in this month it's a time of us being able to stand before the Father and pray in order for the Father to be able to come and set us free. And Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter, and the sovereign said to her, "What is it, Sovereigness Esther? What is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is given to you." Wow, what favor Father gave Queen Esther. What favor Abba Yahuwah will bestow upon us as we cry out to him on behalf of our people in this month of Adar. And Esther answered, "If it pleases the sovereign, let the sovereign and Haman come today to the feast which I have prepared for him." And the sovereign said, "Get Haman at once to do as Esther has said." Then the sovereign and Haman went to the feast which Esther had prepared. And the sovereign said to Esther at that feast of wine, "What is your petition?" And it is given to you. "And what is your request?" "Up to half of the reign, and it is done." And Esther answered and said, "My petition and request is this: if I have found favor in your eyes of the sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign to give my petition and perform my request, then let the sovereign and Haman come to the feast which I make to them, and tomorrow I shall be doing to the word of the sovereign." And Haman went out that day rejoicing with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the sovereign's gate, so you see, this is the whole thing of when Esther has fasted 3 days. So Esther fasts for 3 days, comes before the king, and he stretches out his scepter before her. So in this next month, it is a month of where we will come before the Father in fasting, in prayer, to have to ask the Father to stretch out his scepter. Because remember, this was the time of when the judgment was happening, of the plagues that was coming upon the Egyptians, and judgment is coming, and that we can stand in the gap on behalf of our people for the judgments that are about to be unleashed upon the earth. And that is why it is a month of where we have to come and clean ourselves up in order for us to be able to be set free, to know that there is nothing within us, that we're not on the trading floor with the enemy, that we are not still trading with the enemy on a trading floor, so that we may be able to stand before the Father and have him stretch out his scepter towards us. And then if we have a look at chapter 9, Esther chapter 9, and we look from verses 17. That was on the 13th day of the new moon of Adar, and on the 14th they rested in it and made it a day of feasting and gladness. So on the 14th day of that new moon, of that month, they celebrated a feast and gladness. But the Yehudim who were at Shushan assembled on the 13th day, as well as on the 14th day, and on the 15th they requested it and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Yehudim of the villages who dwelt in the unwalled towns were making the 14th day of the new moon of Adar a good day of gladness and feasting, for sending portions to one another. And Mordecai wrote these matters and sent letters to all the Yehudim who were in all the provinces of the sovereign Asheroth, both near and far, to establish among them to perform the 14th day and the 15th days of the new moon of Adar yearly. So it was a decree that came out from Mordecai that they were to be able to celebrate this. And the book of Esther is read at this time of the month of Adar, which is a beautiful book to read in this time, to be able to understand everything of how the Father came to deliver these people, and how interesting it is that as he delivers them, then they go into, just if you think about it, this is being done in the 12th month, and then they come into the new year with the Passover, where they pass over as being free and set free, which is exactly what the Father wants to be able to do in this month, as we prepare ourselves to be able to pass over into our promised land, like the Israelites came out of Egypt into the wilderness, like the Israelites came out of the wilderness into the promised land, always at the month of Passover. And that is why the month that we are in now, this month of Adar, prepares us to pass over into that which the Father has. So this month is a vital point in the year that represents a time to gain rule over the powers of darkness, because this is when Haman was destroyed. The powers of darkness that wanted to take out the Jewish people, that wanted to take out the Israelites and Esther's people, they were destroyed. And the time to find supply that has been concealed, and a time to rejoice that our curse has been overturned. Remember, the gallows that were being set up for Mordecai was in turn set up for Haman, that was hung on those gallows. And that's what we must understand. So we must understand that this is a time of where we are in such a pivotal time. We are in a time of a very important time, in a strategic time, of an alignment of time, when the Father is wanting to be able to restore his glory upon the earth, but he's got to do it through earthen vessels. That is Isaiah chapter 60, arise and shine, for your light has come, for the glory of Yahuwah has risen upon you. Great darkness is going to cover the earth, but we are to rise up, and we are to become the light that needs to shine. And so when we have a look at this month of Adar, we will find in this time, because of the fact that Father's going to overthrow the darkness, Father's going to overthrow the works of the enemy. Understand, the whole world has been celebrating a new year starting in, the 1st of January. But we have continued for another 2 months And our year has been long, and we are looking forward to this new year, to finally saying, wow, Father, let us start a clean slate. The battle has been wild. The winds have been raging. The storms have been there for this last year that has been raging. But we are getting ready for a new year. And so therefore, we will find new strength in the midst of any battle and gain victory over the enemy that has been raging against us in this last year. And we praise Yahuwah as we come in this month. We fervently want to be able to raise up in this time in fervent prayer, to be able to lay down all, to prepare ourselves, to fast and pray if we must be doing that, preparing ourselves to be able to enter. Just like Esther fasted and prayed 3 days to prepare herself in order to be able to come before the king. And so we want to celebrate in this time of the fact that we will defeat the enemy and we will enter in this place of joy. And so this is a time of when we will overturn those curses where the enemy has tried to entrap us and enslave us, that were trying to destroy us. So it's a time for us to be able to put on our dancing shoes and celebrate the enemy's defeat, as they celebrated in the book of Esther, the enemy's defeat. And so this will be a time of joy and laughter, and it will be a time of his light having to enter and push back the darkness. And now we look at the understanding of this 12th month. So if we look at the number 12, as we start to wind down our teaching here. So when we look at the number 12, the number 12 is the number of governmental perfection. So it's now when we are going to enter into the fullness. You see, when we cross over, we must cross over as the fullness of the house. And that's why, you see, each month has been to be, we only started this now, but because the Father is doing it now. So now I'm starting every month by being able to teach on the tribes. And Father started it. He started it himself supernaturally. It's not something that I even planned to do. It's something that came in the time of when we were taking communion, that the Father just decided that this is what is going to be done. But as we come to the end of the 12 months, it's the gathering of the house. And so this number is one of the most significant in the Bible, and it is associated with government, or the structure of government and divine selection, because it's making up 12 apostles, it's making up 12 tribes, it's making up 12 gates, just like you get 7. So it's the birth of the 12 tribes, it's the 12 disciples, it's multiples of 12, and it's associated with government. So we have a look and we see even in the tabernacle, you have a look at the 12 stones on the breastplate of Aaron's breastplate had 12 stones. You have a look at the 12 cakes of the showbread. You had 6 on the one side, 6 on the other, which really representing 6 tribes on the one side, 6 tribes on the other. And it's the 12 rods that they put in because each tribe brought their rod. And so this number is perfect government, and it's the 12. It's also representing the 12 gates of Jerusalem, where you've got in Ezekiel chapter 48, where you've got the 12 gates representing the 12 tribes once again. So the number of permanent perfection of divine government, and it's an apostolic fullness because it's also the 12 apostles, the 12 disciples, which make up the 12 apostles. So it's also an apostolic calling. So understand, beloveds, as we are now coming in this month, the month of Adar, as I'm teaching the month of Adar, before it's even coming to the month of Adar, so that we can prepare ourselves for the month of Adar. It is a call for us to now rise up into our divine governmental order, to start operating in the fullness, where we have to start seeing the body coming together. We have to start seeing this body coming together as a body, to be able to start coming and operating and functioning in a governmental way, to be able to lay down governmental orders coming from the Father. And it's the apostolic. So you see this prophetic apostolic, this apostolic prophetic, that is the foundation. You've got people wanting to lay foundations that are like teachers, and they are pastors, but they are not the ones who lay the foundations. The foundations is laid by an apostolic prophetic order. They are the ones that lay the foundations. So there are 12 foundations in the heavenly Jerusalem, and it's the 12 gates. And we look at that through the 12 tribes, and we see the apostolic call, which is the authority. It's the apostolic calling. It's the 12 stones in the high priest's breastplate, and it is the divine election. And so at the end, in Revelation chapter 21, verses 19 to 21, you also got the tree of life, which bore the 12 fruits. And so we see this number 12. And so if we look at the 12, and like I said to you, I'm not going to glean from everybody. I'm using the letter of the number 12, because if this is the 12th month, then it's the 12th letter. And the 12th letter of the 12th letter in the Hebrew letter is the Lamed. And the Lamed, it's so interesting that it just ties in with the number 12 being the 12th month, because everything ties in together. And that's why I don't know where they go and get these other, these other letters that they say is for that month or whatever. Father just said to me, you go and get the 12th letter for the 12th month, and that's the Lamed. And that is the shepherd's staff. And so that means shepherd, it means staff, it means to control, it means authority. So it's where we need to raise up in our authority. It's to protect. The Father protected his people in that time. The Father protected his people when the firstborn was, when the plagues was taking place. He was protecting his people in in Goshen. It's to teach, it's the tongue, it's to connect, and it's to give direction. So that is the Lamed, which is the 12th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The 12th letter is the Lamed. I know it's the numerical value number 30, but it's the 12th letter. And the Father said, go and see what is the 12th letter. And that's why the 12th letter is lining up with everything that is here for this month, because we need to have the shepherd's staff. We need to have the Father stretch out his scepter, his staff, giving us the staff, giving us the rod, to give us the direction, that we need to go, to show favor to us. We need to be able to have his control, his guidance. We need to have his authority. So just as Esther rose up in an authority, she was a queen, she carried an authority, even though she was not allowed to come before, she wasn't summoned to come before the king, yet she rose up in the authority that she had, and she laid her life down in order to be able to come and save her people at the time. And it's to protect. And so in that time, the Father protected his people. And the Father protected his people even when they were in Egypt. It is a time to teach. That is part of the Naphtali. Naphtali, the Father puts the word in their mouth that they are to speak, that they are to bring a word, they are to be able to teach a word, they are to be able to preach a word at the time when it is given. It is the tongue. So this is a time of where we need to guard our tongue and what our tongue is going to speak, to connect and to give direction. And so this is part of the leadership that gives direction. It's to teach, it's to shepherd, it's the staff. And this is where the scepter is stretched out in this month for us to be able to be led into the fullness of that which the Father's got for us to come into as we are preparing ourselves to enter then into the new year. So we praise Abba Yahuwah for this teaching and for what Abba is having to be able to reveal to us at this time. And so, Abba, I praise and I thank you, my Father, that you alone will be able to help us, Father, that we will be able to come out of the house of the sun god, that we will be able to come out of all idolatry, the idolatry of the worship of the religious systems of this world. And it doesn't matter what religious system it is. If it is religious, we are to come out of it. And let us be able to come back and put our feet solid on the rock which is Yahushua, our Messiah, who is the rock of ages. And he is the one that is the one that stretches out his scepter over us, the one that has the rod, the one that stretches out his rod, the one that gives us the direction that we are to go in, the one that teaches us the way to go, the one that will shepherd us, the one that will be able to cover us and protect us, the one that gives us the direction. I praise and I thank you for this in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah.